Coming up on All About Android, it's me, Jason Howell, Ron Richards, Florence Ion, and our guest, Michal Rahman from XDA, who actually breaks down some of the hidden secrets buried inside of Android 12 developer preview that just came out. Also, the Pixel 5a is basically the Pixel 4a 5G, so don't get too excited about that. Samsung is upping their update game. How will Google respond to that? I'm very curious about that. Also, Google is bringing games to Android Auto, but it's not what you might be thinking. Plus, your email and a whole lot more next on All About Android.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This episode of All About Android is brought to you by Udacity. Build your tech skills through industry-leading programs created and recognized by top companies worldwide with a nano degree from Udacity in as little as 12 weeks. Visit udacity.com/twit and use coupon code TWIT at checkout to get 50% off through May 30th, 2021. Hello and welcome to All About Android, episode 513, recorded on Tuesday, February 23rd, 2021. Your weekly source for the latest news, hardware, and apps for the Android faithful. I'm Jason Howell.
And I'm Ron Richards.
And I'm Florence Ion. Hi, guys.
Hello. And welcome. This is one of those moments in the year. It happens every year. We have this episode.
One of those episodes.
It's one of those episodes where Google does us a favor and they do something big. And then, of course, we have to install it on our phones and talk about it and bring on an amazing guest, which we have done this week. Joining us once again, the return of Michal Rahman from XDA Developers. It's good to have you back, Michal.
Glad to be back. I'm glad to be here
the crowd
to
cheering
talk
in the
about the new
background.
Android OS.
The new and improved, or I don't know if it's improved necessarily, but it's definitely new Android OS, which we're going to dive right into. As the news was breaking last week, I was like, kind of reading along, and I realized pretty much all the articles I was reading were from XDA because I had already been reading all the articles you were putting out prior to the release. So I mean, I knew something was, and I think we even mentioned it on the show last week when we were talking about Android 12. We were like, when is this going to happen? It feels like it's right around the corner. And sure enough, it was like literally a day or two around the corner. You guys were killing it on the pre-release stuff.
You guys were super killing it. I mean, everything was coming from you guys. And we really appreciate you've been doing the work because now we kind of know what's coming up.
Totally.
Yep.
So thank you.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot coming up. A lot that Google is hidden. They don't want people to see, but there's a lot of changes coming up this year. Probably
well, you
their
figure
biggest
all they've been
release in
doing
years.
is working
Biggest release
and
in years.
collaborating.
So Michal just called this probably the biggest release in years, and I'm really curious to touch into that. Obviously, Android 12 developer preview released, and we're going to talk about it. Why don't we just jump right in, Burke? It's time for the news.
Last week, All About Auto. This week, Android 12. All the way down.
All the way.
I do like this. I do like this new deep dive format that we're doing. Last week we did a deep dive with Sam Abil Samed about Android Auto, and now Michal coming in with Android 12. I mean, this is really this is meaty Android. I like it.
Yeah.
Meaty. I like that. With cheese, please.
So we did, we did talk about some of this stuff last week, but that was when it was unconfirmed, at least at that point. Snow cone still appears to kind of be the internal code word. At this point, has Google even confirmed that? I didn't even check to see if anywhere in this release they even throw like a shout out to it at all. But are we still kind of going on internal sources reveal?
Right. They haven't confirmed it anywhere in the OS. Possibly the only hint you'll get is the icon for Android debugging. It's kind of shaped like a snow cone, but that's all you'll get. You won't see any real evidence for it right now.
Okay. Well, that might be evidence enough if it looks kind of like a snow cone. I appreciate what you guys created. I know that's not official, but it looks delicious nonetheless. So
wait, so that's Wait, so how was that rendered again?
Oh, that icon is we just hired a graphic designer who's making icons and iconography for us. So since I knew that snow cone would be the not public dessert name, we asked them to make a bunch of Android 12 related snow cone images ahead of time.
Ah, okay.
Smart. Well, I like it.
All right.
That person did a great job. And who knows? Maybe it'll end up, I don't know how Google works. Maybe they'll like adopt it and be like, hey, hook us up. So you can install the developer preview. This is developer preview 1 of Android 12. If you have, a whole host of Pixel devices, I didn't look at the list, but I'm assuming it's Pixel 2 and newer. I was able to install it on my Pixel 3a that I have right here. Which you wouldn't really know. Like I have it installed on here, but once again, it's one of those things that's really, at least at this stage, kind of hard to see that I'm running anything other than, any other, version of Android that we're used to looking at. Which is interesting.
Does dark mode work?
Well, where is dark mode? I feel like I had it. Oh, maybe Burke. But I'm not going to look for it right now because I don't want to spend time looking for it. Maybe while Michelle is talking, I'll be able to find the dark mode and switch that on. But what I think is interesting is that a lot of what we were hearing about in the leaks, and of course, XDA was instrumental to kind of the release of the information, is all about this UI redesign. And I don't know if that's Monet, what we were seeing before, as far as like this very different. It was almost kind of like an amber theme on Android, and looked very different from what we're used to seeing. We're not seeing any of that in Android 12 Developer Preview 1 right out of the box, but you have been kind of diving in and triggering some of this stuff on your own to make it happen. Were you able to kind of get to a point to where you could replicate that view, and does that tell you anything about what we can expect versus what we're seeing right now?
Right. So since this is a developer preview, Google intentionally disables a lot of their public-facing changes because they want to wait for a big reveal at I/O, where they'll announce a whole bunch of features and put up videos and blog posts and all that stuff. That's when they'll show off a lot of this stuff. So the images that we saw before DP1 dropped last week, those are from a design mock-up that Google shared with their OEM partners to give them an idea of what some of the features and the theming capabilities will look like in the new Android OS release. So even though they disabled all those features in Developer Preview 1, there are still, in order to make it easier for internal testers, they still leave some hidden commands in, they still leave the code in. And so basically us and a few others dove into the code and figured out what commands they were using, how to trigger some of these hidden features. And based on what we've seen so far, there's a total of about 20 hidden features that we've enabled. It feels like we've gotten to a point where we were able to match what we saw in the leaked images. And we've also shown off a lot more features than we originally knew existed.
And it's important to note that those features won't necessarily make the final release. They're just at the current state of development now, that because Google could pull stuff back in future versions, right?
They've certainly done that before, yeah.
Right. So as an example of that, we first saw hints of the scrolling screenshots feature in Android 11, but the button for it was completely non-functional. That's not the case in Android 12. It actually works now. It's a little bit buggy. It doesn't work everywhere, but it actually works. So it looks like it could make its way into this release. So there could be features like that are seemingly functional here, but Google is not happy with the way they function, and they might hold off on them for Android 13.
When you're going in, I'm just curious about process here. So when you're going, when a new version like the developer preview drops, and suddenly, you and the other folks at XDA are like, all hands on deck. It's time for us to spring into action. It's like the Batman symbol is in the sky, and now suddenly you're being beckoned to like destroy it and pull it apart and everything. like, are you literally just going through and like testing every little thing that you find, switching them on and seeing then how that interacts with what you see on the screen? It seems like that would take a lot of time. How does that work?
Well, we're not blindly testing everything that we see. We're able to basically our process is we compare applications and files from the latest Android 11 release, for example, and then we download the firmware for Android 12, and then we compare them and we see what's new. If we see something that sounds interesting, we'll dig deeper into the code and see, is there a way we can enable this? And if so, how? So then we try it out, and if it works as we expected, then we have something to show off. We're not just like blindly finding things and turning it on, seeing what it does. We already have an idea of what it'll do, and we're seeing if we can actually show it off.
That would be me if I was working at XDA. I'd be like, I don't know this thing. Switch it on. Yeah, sure, whatever. It's a letter. Go. Yeah, you guys are a little more systematic about it, so that's good. It's probably more effective that way. So this is okay. So I understand why Google isn't making the developer preview, represent all of this, like these major UI changes that we're kind of expecting. But it does kind of seem like there's a lot of things that kind of hint at that. You guys wrote about new lock screen and notification UI. The Pixel is going to get some lock screen clocks. And I don't know if that's exclusive to just the Pixel or maybe initially and then eventually it gets broadened out. That wallpaper theming system, Monet, just a whole lot of like UI and design and visual optimizations that are changed. But again, like I mentioned, like I've got it running on my phone, and you really wouldn't know the difference between this and Android 11 as it stands right now. If you were a betting man, would you think that one of Android 12's big like marquee kind of features is going to be a major UI refresh? Like that's one of the things that Google's really hanging its hat on this time around?
I think that's absolutely what they're aiming for. So one of the first things that we discovered is a feature flag called Silky Home, and that changes the settings app and basically all the settings menus to be much more one-handed friendly. If you've ever used a Samsung phone and used One UI, then you'll know exactly what that looks like. Basically, everything is shifted down like about 25% from the top. That, coupled with the fact that it's now a dedicated one-handed mode feature that you can trigger that works just like Apple's reachability feature, suggests that one-handed usability is one of the biggest changes coming to Android 12. So I think this is definitely one of the biggest changes that they're going to make.
Do you think that this has any correlation? This might seem kind of like a left field question, but I'm just sort of curious because of just like current events and where we are at. Do you think that development of this is, that we're looking at the sort of really big release because of the fact that it was kind of an incubation period? Or do you think that this is something that was just, planned, just based on what you guys have seen?
So a lot of these features had to have been planned like many, 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 many months ago. We know they've been working on this stuff since at least the middle of 2020, if not earlier. And they had to have meetings with product managers and a whole bunch of other people internally at Google to decide what features are we going to work to introduce in Android 12 and what are we going to hold off for a future release. I don't know, like the stars just aligned to make this one of the biggest feature updates in years. It just looks like this is the year we're going to see so many features that we've been waiting for years. And like Android 11, Android 10 didn't really introduce very many changes. This is more akin to like Android 5 Lollipop, how massive that update was.
Wow. That's a big deal.
And part of,
yeah,
but part of that is like I feel like we're collectively, we all agree we're due, right? But to your point, it seems like some of this stuff is stuff that was in development that was never quite there, and that it's just like it almost seems like they've got enough now to make a really big push for it. And how much of is it more just the confluence of the one-handed UI and the different UI optimizations plus the theming and the wallpaper? Like, they could have spaced that stuff out, but the fact that they're all timed at the same time is potentially making Android 12 bigger than perhaps, I mean, this is all speculation, than they had planned at that point in their roadmap when they were rolling out 11, right? Do you think how much of this do you think is just kind of happy circumstance versus actually they plotted this to be so big?
I think it's definitely a bit of both, probably more planning than just circumstances led to this way. I mean, a lot of these features are a natural progression of what they've already been working on. So, like, for example, this wallpaper-based theming system is not actually an entirely new theming system. It's basically just taking exactly what they already have and making it so it can use another API to extract colors from a wallpaper. That API was introduced all the way back in Android Oreo. So they're using that API to extract colors from a wallpaper, and then they're applying themes based on that. And those APIs for theming were introduced also in Oreo. So they're just taking bits and pieces and expanding slowly a lot of the features they already had or were working on.
Right.
You guys
either way, 12 is a really nice number to do a really big release. So
as a snow cone. Well, so going through some of the stuff that you guys posted, like the one thing that caught my eye was this, the audio coupled haptic effects. So, like, can you share with us what that is and why that potentially could be so impactful?
It's more of a neat gimmick than an actual game-changing feature. So basically, what that feature will do is, if the phone you have has a motor that's capable of really, really subtle vibrational effects, then this new API will be able to basically produce waveforms based on whatever audio is playing, and it can vibrate your phone according to the audio. So in the article that I posted, we had a tester who played a bit from a few Daft Punk songs, and you could basically hear the song even though the audio was muted from the phone because it was just vibrating according to it. You'd have to turn off the audio to actually hear it vibrate according to the song.
I'm sorry, I just had a moment. That sounds like an accessibility feature to me, or like the beginnings of one. You know what I mean? Google like something to, help those who can't hear to get into the music on their phone. I don't know. Just an idea.
You know what it reminds me
Google
of, Flo?
Seems to...
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say real quick, it reminds me of, what was that watch that you brought onto the show, Flo?
I just unpacked it today because I was cleaning my room. I have it, yeah.
It was like a vibration watch that you can sync up with your music, right? Wasn't it syncable to the music so that, you'd feel the bass on your wrist or something like that? It's kind of hilarious.
Sorry, Michelle, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Michelle.
So since it's an API, it can be used by any app that wants to produce their own custom vibrations. So Google says you could have like your video calling app create vibrational ringtones, or you could have your gaming app make vibrations based on whatever is happening, in the game. Music playing is obviously our test case here because it was the easiest to implement by the developer. But yeah, it's an open API, and the only requirement is that your device has to support the kind of really fine-tuned vibrations that are required for this to work. And unfortunately, Google's latest Pixel 5 and 4a 5G don't support it. The only Pixel phones that do support it are the 4 and 4 XL.
Interesting.
So I guess in that sense, maybe it couldn't be an accessibility feature just because it's limited availability depending on the hardware. But regardless, I think that this is why work like this is important, just going super into the weeds and seeing what's there, because that could lead to other stuff down the line.
Sure.
And I find that you know what? the haptic effect, it is cooler than it sounds, like the headline says on XDA developers. So
it is. That's what I thought it was. That really jumped out to me as something that could be. And you're right, Michelle. I like that is not as much of a game changer, but that is one that stacked with everything else makes it stand out as being such a big release.
Unique. Yeah, certainly unique. Now, explain this the back gesture change in behavior. You guys wrote about machine learning to apply to this. I guess first start with the issue of the back gesture and how this might actually solve it.
So, as you all are familiar, Android 10 introduced full screen navigation gestures. You have the pill at the bottom, and to go back, instead of pushing a button, you swipe inwards from the sides. So Google had to figure out, where do we determine the back gesture starts and where do we determine it ends? So they basically picked a certain, like a threshold value. So like if you put your finger here and then you swipe inwards a little bit, that will trigger a back gesture. So that works for the vast majority of apps, but there are a couple of cases where an app might have a side drawer. And if you accidentally swipe in that direction, you'll open the side drawer instead of going back, or vice versa, which might accidentally close the app, which would be a frustrating experience. So because these inset values are hard-coded, the back gesture will work really well in some apps. It might not work well in other apps. So what Google is testing, this is not something they're confirmed to actually implement. They basically trained a machine learning model against a whole bunch of popular apps, about like 43,000, basically determining what are the optimal starting and end points for performing a back gesture inside this particular app. So instead of having a hard-coded, like invisible trigger area for your back gesture, this trigger area is determined by a machine learning model that's already been trained. So it just be a little bit smarter, and it produce less frustrating results in select apps. It's not implemented yet, and it's kind of hard to tell if it's actually working really well, even if you do enable the feature. It's just one of those it's really hard to tell unless you have the data that Google has. So we're probably just gonna have to wait to see what they say about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've certainly encountered issues with it before, but then at the same time, not enough to where I'm like, this is the worst thing in the world, But it really just depends on the app that you're using, I suppose.
Do you have it enabled right now?
Sorry?
Do you have the gesture enabled right now, Jason?
Well, no, I'm just saying in general, using gestures on Android 11, like I've certainly run into issues where.
Do you have gestures? Or are you using them right now? I'm just curious if you've gone to the navigation, the traditional 3-button.
No. I'm using gestures. I'm all in on the Google gesture navigation for sure. So much so that when I pick up my wife's phone, I'm like thrown off because she has the 3 buttons, and it takes me a few swipes before I realize, I have to just tap those again.
By the way, that was the first thing I turned off. I mean, that was the first thing I turned off, but I am 3-button. Like I just cannot.
Same.
I cannot retrain myself to a new paradigm. So I don't know.
It's actually very.
I know I should, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was different in the beginning, and now it's just as with anything like that, right? Like it's second nature.
You train yourself.
I don't even think about it.
Yeah, it becomes muscle. It becomes muscle memory and all that sort of stuff. It's just that. Absolutely. It's that first beginnings of it that are so hard, and I just didn't have the patience.
Yeah.
So do we have feelings about the fact that there's this, I mean, the headline is that this machine learning is fixing the back gesture problem. I guess I'm just sort of, I don't know. It feels maybe flabbergasted. I don't know if that's the right word, about the fact that we're still discussing how to make the gestures better. Like they don't just work out of the box.
Right. At this point, shouldn't the gestures work?
Listen,
3 versions in?
Gestures are hard.
Are they this hard though? Like we have to keep iterating and iterating and iterating. I mean, I like the clever use of machine learning, but
it's a particularly complicated problem for Google because because Android is open and developers are free to design apps however they want, Google doesn't have like mandatory design practices, or you'll get booted off the Play Store. Because of that, there's just no way they can control how the back gesture will interfere in certain apps or not. They have recommendations and guidelines that developers should follow, but they can't enforce that, or they aren't enforcing it. So because of that, there's just always going to be a few apps, popular apps even, where it just doesn't work well. And then developers or users will blame Google for the back gesture rather than blaming the developer for not updating their app to support back gestures properly.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Looking at what you've seen and played around with so far, like what is the one thing that you're most excited about? And that could be, you mentioned that you found a whole lot of stuff that's hidden away that isn't even active yet. So that could include anything in there. What is the one kind of breadcrumb that you're most excited about with this release?
I would have to say in general, it'd be the one-handed changes to the UI and couple that with the one-handed mode gesture. Because, I like using big phones, but I also hate using big phones because they're hard to use with one hand.
Yeah. Yep. Been there, done that. And then finally, you guys also wrote about Android TV. Android 12 preview is also releasing for developers of Android TV. Are there any clues there? Or obviously, again, it's a developer preview, so it can be kind of light on like major changes to the OS that are user facing, let's say. But what can you tell us about that? Is there anything that we need to know?
Well, to be honest, I haven't even taken a look at the actual build yet. Because I don't have the ADT3, which is the developer device that's required. It's the only device that's supported by the Android 12 developer preview for Android TV devices. There are two builds available. What I know is that there's an Android TV build and there's a Google TV build. So I find that interesting that Google is still supporting both versions of the interface with their Android 12 release.
You find that interesting, and I find that as a user annoying.
Yeah, it's bizarre.
Because it's like,
so bizarre.
I get that we have to adjust the operating system for so much different hardware, but it's, as the person who was complaining about the Mi box for such a long time and having to resort to the itty bitty little dongle, I'm a little peeved. So, I feel justified.
Yeah. Burke, before we move on to the ad, I'll go ahead and throw this image right below that very last link in that top block. Uncle Bick in the chat room pasted this image, and I think this harkens back to earlier in the conversation how XDA is just waiting for the Android signal in the sky in order to get to work. And of course, someone in our chat room, I don't know if it was you, Uncle Bick, that created it, but
I don't see it. Where'd you paste it?
Oh yeah, it's right underneath the Google TV thing. It's like the last link there before the ad.
That's a real chuckle.
It's right here.
Got it.
There we go.
Have to ask now, was this role played by Ben Affleck?
I don't know. That's a good question. Probably depends on, I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, whether it is or not. Are you pro Ben Affleck Batman or or not, Flo?
No.
No. I don't know. See, that's how clueless I am with the Batman movies. So, all right. Well, a lot to look forward to. I'm excited to hear and to know that Android 12 is going to be a major refresh. I think like the last couple of years, they've been the updates have been fine, but they have been super incremental. And I feel like nothing gets people excited more than like something they can really look at and be like, okay, this looks different. And of course, everybody's going to have their own opinion as far as like whether they like it or not. But the fact that Google is finally kind of changing things up, I don't know, maybe it's going to take a little bit of like this comfort or this staleness of the OS, and I don't know, shaking things up is a good thing. And I think ultimately we'll get used to it. Yeah, change
is good. It makes you reflect on where you've come. I mean, it's always a little tumultuous. I mean, that's the kind of thing, is that like we're going through a major cultural change right now, and it's not one that any of us asked for, and so it always feels very difficult. But a change of an OS in this magnitude is something we can look forward to, and we can embrace, and we can learn, and we can reinvent ourselves. We can rise like the phoenix and have a new operating system to talk about for the next 8 months.
It's a good change.
It's good. Change is good. So
yeah. But no developers conference to congregate at, and
Well, yeah, but that's the thing too, is that we're talking about the timing of this and the rollout and all this sort of stuff, and taking that into account too. Like all the previous models are out the window, so we don't know what's going to happen next week or what's around the corner. So,
yeah. I mean, I think Google did release some form of schedule on, its anticipated release of the next, developer preview and the betas leading up to the final release, which I think is, sometime in Q3. Off the top of my head, I can't remember, which was similar to last year, but last year got totally thrown out of whack for a number of reasons. So I'm sure it'll be a little bit more, they'll be able to dictate it a little bit closer to that schedule this time around.
But I mean, I'm also just thinking about just the general marketing around all this, because I know we're talking about the developer, the real inside baseball stuff right now, but I'm thinking just in a couple of months it'll be here pretty soon when that happens and this goes live, like how, I don't know, is it going to have the same kind of fanfare that it has in years past? Is it going to have the same impact, especially if it's going to be like a huge UI redesign? And because if it's not just a UI, if it's a UI redesign in addition to, like y'all were saying, this sort of new usability, pattern, just something to get people to want to use something new. I don't know. I'm just thinking about how what that's going to look like when it goes live.
Yeah.
In this climate. And the way that things are right now. I wouldn't be asking this if we were in quote unquote normal times, whatever the heck that means.
Whatever it is, there is no such thing as normal anymore. I mean, I think from a marketing perspective, it's way, I would guess anyways, I'm not a marketing pro or anything, but I would guess it's infinitely easier to market something when you've got this new visual presentation to point to. I mean, like an all new look, as opposed to privacy changes under the hood that you really, you have to like read and like think about on a deeper level in order to really understand whether that's a significant change or not. It's just sexier to be able to look at like a brand new UI, and again, whether you like it or not, that's another question. But that's something that you can point to and say, here's what we, here's how we get people excited. This is new and this looks new. And we got very excited when the last major change happened and material design was introduced and all that. So I don't know. I think it'll be interesting to see how people react this time around.
But Jason, that was the Obama era. It was a very long time ago.
Android is not entirely tied into politics. Let's just say.
No,
Thankfully.
What I'm trying to say is that was like that was a different era.
That was a long time ago.
Yeah. That was a long time ago. Just in cultural, like how much has happened since then culturally.
Sure.
All right, I'm thinking too meta about this. I'll get back to this. I will work on this.
So the reaction that I think you'll all see the most frequently, you already see this a couple of times whenever Google introduces a feature that was already in Samsung's version of Android. Especially with all the features we're seeing now that are already present in One UI, you're probably going to see a lot of comments saying, "What's the big deal? I've already had this feature."
Oh, totally.
That's probably the number one response you're going to get.
This is gonna. I was gonna follow up how this is going to play with all the other like interfaces. I know that was a big question we were asking with material design, and then we saw how that it never quite. I mean, it synced, sort of. People took liberties. So it's interesting that you say that now it's sort of the other way around. And I imagine that is the case because I think Google wants to keep selling these phones. So
yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think Google is taking a lot of taken a lot of ideas of what is out there already. You know, Samsung is only one of many, you know, hardware.
Yes, but it's
makers
the one
that has
it's the flagship. It's the big kahuna. It's all the bells and whistles. You pay $1,500 to $1,700 if you want, and you can get like everything top tier Android has to offer, so to speak. And we know that a lot of the development team uses the Samsung phones to do development, so it's not a surprise to kind of see them go that way, because
Those
also
lines
it's
merging.
something new than trying to forge through on your own thing.
Yeah. Yes, indeed. And we have, you know, stories coming up here that talk about even further, like companies like Samsung and Google kind of merging in their efforts. So we're going to talk about that in a moment. First, let's take a break and thank the sponsor of this episode of All About Android, and that is Udacity. Udacity is awesome. If you're in a position or in a time where you want to learn a new skill, I mean, you can't do better than Udacity. The tech world is it's complicated. And, you know, if you want to find a new job in the tech realm, you need to have the right skills for that job. And Udacity is the world's fastest, most efficient way to master the skills that tech companies want. And you can do that especially with their Nano Degree program. The Udacity Nano Degree program is a unique online educational offering, and it's really designed to bridge the gap between learning and whatever your career goals happen to be. They partner with industry leaders and experts who understand the in-demand skills that are applicable to the job market. And they actually also help you build a portfolio on GitHub and LinkedIn, both very important elements that you can show prospective employers. And you can, you know, learn how to network, get noticed, land, hopefully, your dream career. So what are the most sought after nano degrees with Udacity for consumers and for business clients alike? Well, some of the nano degrees that you're going to find in the top 10, just to name a few: data analyst, program for data science with Python and digital marketing. They have so many programs, awesome programs that you can just, you know, browse, take a look at, and choose from. Ultimately, AI, cloud computing, data science, and autonomous systems, that's self-driving cars, programming and development, product management, digital marketing. I mean, you just go on there and you'll get lost in all of the options, and it might kind of jog your memory as far as like, you know what, that sounds like a great direction to go, and you can dive right in and get to learning. Nano degree programs may include classroom mentorship, so you get that kind of one-on-one experience, moderated forums, product reviews or project reviews to really enhance that personalized experience. You can build skills through industry-leading programs that are built and recognized by top companies worldwide. So IBM, Microsoft, Google, Amazon's AWS, people from all over the world are actually using Udacity, and right now especially, and there have been 150,000 nano degree certificates earned to date. You can improve your earning potential. That's nice. Take even further charge of your career. With Udacity, you're going to get real employable skills through project-based active learning that really covers cutting-edge technology. And you're working with qualified professionals who can review the projects that you're doing. So you're going to have real human help, like I said, personalized code reviews as well. You get access to qualified mentors 24/7. And if you want to just kind of like check it out and see what it's all about, kind of dip your toe in, you can check out Udacity's free courses. Yes, they do have some free courses. They also offer flexible payment options, and you can learn at your own pace and schedule. Francisco Gutierrez found that a 4-year degree was too expensive. Francisco really wanted to see what he could do with Udacity. He participated in the Grow with Google Udacity Challenge. He was awarded a full scholarship for the Mobile Web Specialist Nano degree. After going through the program, he received an internship from Microsoft. Ultimately, they offered him a full-time role as a software engineer. And that's kind of the direction that this can go. It's all made possible because of Udacity. Technology is disrupting enterprises as well across every industry. So you can check out Udacity for enterprise and upskill your workforce. Get them all upskilled. Get the education that broadens your horizons. Visit udacity.com/twit. Do that today and you'll get 50% off through May 30th, 2021. If you want to redeem this offer, you need to use that coupon code. So don't forget that. It's TWIT, easy to remember. The discount will actually be applied at checkout. That's Udacity, UDACITY.com/twit. And do not forget to use the coupon code TWIT to get that discount. And we thank Udacity for their support of All About Android. Man, when the nanodegree program was happening, however many years ago, that was when Gina Trapani was on the show, and she was all about it.
Was that pre-material design? I think it was.
Yeah, probably. I mean, right around there. It could have been borderline material design.
Yeah.
But yeah, she loved the nanodegree program. All right, we've got some cool stuff to talk about in hardware.
Once again, Samsung is giving a reason for you to justify how much money you're spending on their phones. So the company announced yesterday that all of its Galaxy phones and tablets dating back to 2019, that's 2 years ago, will receive a minimum of 4 years of security updates. So in the first 2 years, you can expect consistent monthly security updates for those phones. In the third year, you can expect quarterly updates to keep you going through the year. And in that fourth year, you can expect regular updates, meaning 1 to 2 updates in total, which is some
1 to 2 in total.
Yeah, I mean, some.
So it's really
that Samsung uses.
It's really like 3+ years. It's like the fourth year is a bonus year. You're lucky if they remember to do it.
Well, prior to this, their promise was 3 years. So now by doing this with the terms and conditions, they can extend that marketing speak to say that, yes, we will support you for 4 years.
You'll get one. You'll get an update in that fourth year. It might come the day one into year 4, but yeah.
Right. Yeah. I wonder if
that 1 to 2 updates. The S in parentheses.
They want to leave you. They want to leave their options open. You know, we don't want to lock in. You never know. Hey, maybe you could get 4 updates. You never know. You're covered for 4 years at Samsung.
Yeah,
we have a lot of phones in the cooker.
I would be really curious to know if this 4-year commitment is the same for the enterprise devices, which have had the 4-year commitment before it was introduced here at the consumer level. So I'd be curious if it's the same sort of like the 4th year will give you 1 to 2 updates, person in the enterprise, person with very sensitive data that the company would like access to.
I'm curious, Michelle, if how do you think Google reacts to this? Because, I mean, you know, up until this, like, yes, Samsung is able to now claim the 4 years, which, hey, who are we to complain that they're tacking on an extra update or 2, even if it's lightly updated in that last year? An update's better than no update, so that's good. But Samsung can now claim that. They can now claim that their update schedule is even better than Google's. Do you think Google's going to end up changing theirs, right? Like, even if they weren't before, now they have to, in my mind.
Maybe. To Ron's point, this is not a full, really 4 years of updates. This is like,
But it is something. Michelle, what do you think?
So in terms of Google versus Samsung, I mean, Google still has a slight edge in terms of how frequently they update. They consistently update every single month. They're not doing any quarterly business or like once every half year. But it's true that Samsung will be supporting devices for longer because they have that 4th year commitment. Even if that's not very frequent. That does still mean if there's like a major security vulnerability discovered within that 4th year, you'll eventually get an update that patches it. It may not be immediate, or depending on the severity of the vulnerability, they may push it out sooner than you might think. But you do have that assurance that your phone hasn't been abandoned during the 4th year of your ownership. In terms of what Google and other companies are going to do, well, it's kind of hard to say because this whole update situation is primarily a resource problem. Samsung has the resources, as in like they're willing to spend the money to keep all of their devices updated for 4 years now. Updating devices is really expensive because of all the testing they have to go through, all the changes they have to merge, the developers they have to pay to do that. They have to pay Qualcomm for continued support because Qualcomm doesn't always support every chipset for 3+ years. There's just a lot of money involved in it. And Samsung is willing to pay that. They're willing to invest that, which is admirable. But then again, they are the world's biggest smartphone manufacturer, and they want to compete, or they're pretty much the only ones actually competing with Apple.
Yep.
Right.
And they're eliminating one of the gaps that, gave Apple a huge edge.
It's true. They are competing with Apple. Thanks, Samsung, for carrying the torch for us Android users.
I'm trying to figure out Apple's update promise on their devices. Is it longer than that? Is it 5 years? Or do they even state? I mean, I know that they update longer than 4 years on a lot of them.
Knowing Apple, they probably don't publicize it just so they
they probably don't say it. Just like, don't worry about it.
They just wake up that day and decide to bless people with an update.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's
4 years. 4 years is pretty significant. I guess the next step would be 4 years and not just security updates, 4 years major OS updates, which is what Apple does with iOS, right? Like, very often even much older iPhones will get updated to the next major version. It's just there might be some features missing, that older hardware doesn't support, but they'll still get that update and they'll get it on day one. Android, I don't know that it will ever get there, but 4 years is pretty significant. How many people are holding on to their phones for more than 4 years? I'd say that number's. I mean, there are people that do, but that number's pretty, small.
Yeah. From what I can tell, Apple doesn't announce any sort of update policy, but the way they do it is just basically, your phone's got to update, and they keeps that little red dot in the notification thing, and they just guilt people into applying all their updates, whether you want it or not. I feel like there's less consternation over updates than there is on the Android side of things for some reason. But
no doubt.
but there is no guaranteed schedule there. So. Well, moving on and keeping in Samsung news, a prolific leaker of leaks, Ice Universe on Twitter tweeted last week some shocking news, probably to Flo, given this is a wearable update. Samsung is going to opt for Android on its next smartwatches. What? Dun dun dun. And the leak doesn't really specify if it's going to be Wear OS or Android with a more wearable skinned UI. And this is important because Samsung hasn't had an Android-based smartwatch since it was the Gear Live in 2014, and that's back when the OS was called Android Wear. But Samsung and Google they've been commingling lately, considering that the S21 is going to have Android messages instead of Samsung's SMS app, for example. So this could be another sign of Google and Samsung playing nice. But Tizen, we were gonna rename the show all about Tizen once. That's how it looked like the future was big for Tizen. If you get rid of the watches, what else is running on Tizen? I know my TV out in the living room, the Samsung frame I have is running Tizen, but what else is running Tizen? Michelle, what do you think? What do you think the future looks like for Tizen, given this announcement or leak? It's not even an announcement, just speculation.
Well, Tizen has always been like Samsung's way of, pressuring other companies into saying, if you can't do your job very well, we're just going to have our own OS for the products where you're deficient. So that's been the case for smartwatches for years. And for TVs, Samsung still uses their own OS. So it's interesting to see that they're considering using Android for their next OS. It's possible. I mean, we don't know exactly why they're doing it. Maybe the cost of development of Tizen OS for smartwatches is just not worth it anymore, and they want to use Android but continue to use their own Exynos hardware for their smartwatches. Because usually the problem with Android or Wear OS smartwatches is the combination of, Google not caring enough about Wear OS, plus the lackluster chipsets from Qualcomm that have been powering it. That gap is closed somewhat with the Snapdragon Wear 4100 and the latest versions of Wear OS. But maybe Samsung is seeing an opportunity now that Wear OS has matured enough so that they can pair their excellent Exynos Wear chips with Android to make their next generation smartwatches. But we don't know for sure if that's the way they're going.
But then, what about those of us? I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Go, Flo. You've got the floor.
Ask, what about those of us who have invested in this ecosystem? I'm sort of thinking about the $13 I've spent on watch faces. I don't want that to, I don't want that to be wasted.
$13 is dust in the wind, dude.
Listen, in this economy. No, but in all seriousness, are we looking at a landscape where Samsung is doing both watch OSs just to see what works? They're doing one Wear OS to sort of placate, Google or whatever, or maybe just test it out.
I mean, this could be Google is trying to inject some life into Wear OS, and what's the best way to do that? Then getting one of the biggest manufacturers to kind of recommit to using it, and then hoping that it's the other developers and stuff like that will take notice because the critical mass will be there, and it could be a renewed focus on the platform. But that's if they use Wear OS. They might just use Android and reskin it for a wearable standpoint. I mean, this is all speculation at this point, but who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe they took Tizen as far as it can go too. That's another thing.
But they've done good things with Tizen on the smartwatch.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but Ron just completely triggered my Nest Audio, and the Nest Audio offered to help me learn how to use Wear OS.
Oh, lucky you, Flo.
Fascinating.
So,
are you not wearing headphones?
Quiet. God, stop talking. Oh my God. I'm sorry. I should have muted it.
Are you just on full speakers? That's fascinating.
Did you hear that?
No.
I'm so sorry.
No, we're just trying to figure out how it fired off your speaker.
Is your house haunted?
No, there's a Nest Audio behind me right here.
Is there though? Is there?
Yes. Yes, it's right there. See, it's right there. And it was talking a lot, and I decided to interrupt the whole show and let everybody know about it because Ron said okay, and then he did not take enough pause between that and the G word. So maybe this is an editing mark.
Nah, it's fine. It only happened to you, Flo. It didn't happen to anyone else listening, right?
It only happened to me.
It's usually me that ends up with the misfires on Assistant. So
oh boy,
I'm happy that that's being spread around a little bit. So this was some news I saw over the weekend. Google Pixel 2, 3, and 4 smartphones are having a bunch of camera issues, apparently.
Oh, no.
Android Police has been tracking a large number of one-star reviews on the Google Camera app, and they compiled a bunch of them, and many of them are citing this Pixel camera curse, which I've not experienced, that I know of anyways. I'm using a Pixel 4 XL and have been for the last year and a half, and I haven't experienced this on my phone. But what does that mean? Apparently, a bunch of people are. Basically, the camera app shows the UI, but the viewfinder stays black. Sometimes the app won't load or won't open. Sometimes it crashes after launch. It also affects third-party apps that are tapping into the camera. So you see here, you get the little message, something went wrong. I know I've experienced that before, but not on like a repeated basis where I'm like, okay, there's something wrong. Like, I might restart if that happened and everything clears itself up. Google told Android Police that hardware failure is likely to blame. even though it would be easy to point to the software and say, hey, the software is not working, that app's not working, but they say there's something going on with the hardware, probably. But when they did that, they also pointed to wear and tear, physical damage, drops of the device, that sort of stuff as a culprit, which kind of sounds, I don't know, if a bunch of people are complaining at the same time on all these devices about the same problem, I can't imagine that they all dropped their phone and suddenly it all happened to all of them. So I don't know how big of a problem this actually is, but people are certainly talking about it. Calls into question kind of like the hardware longevity of Google's hardware division, and whether people can trust that the Google hardware that they're buying in their Pixel phones is going to last. And to that end, maybe it doesn't matter if it gets 4 years of updates because it might not live that long. So there you go. But I don't know. Is this as big of an issue as people are making it seem based on what you guys have heard here?
I mean, if your phone straight up just can't open the camera app, that is certainly a big issue, especially if you have to use it for classes, or you got to take photos of a document or something. Yeah, I mean, it's unusable then if it doesn't work. So it is a big issue for the people who are affected. I mean, we don't know how many people are actually affected, what percentage of Pixel users are affected. None of my Pixels are having any issues, but I don't know anyone who is having issues, but there are certainly reports of it happening. So sure, I guess it's an issue that Google has to look into.
Right. And I think from what I read, there have been some kind of RMAs if the device is still covered, but the majority of the devices that seem to be affected by this are Pixel 2 devices. And so they're 3 and change years old at this point. So I doubt they're being covered by an RMA or being replaced by Google for any reason, that a device at that point is just old enough for them to not replace them. So I suppose. Failure,
or is it a?
What's that?
Is it a hardware failure, or is it a fancy computer situation?
What is a fancy computer situation?
I don't know. I meant to say that because there's so much that goes into processing a photo when you snap one on a Pixel. Like, I wonder if something, I don't know. This is
right.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe that, but that shouldn't happen. And other phones don't do that. It ends up being one of those things like, okay, well, I guess you can explain it away, but still, it shouldn't happen. That shouldn't be happening on a phone that's 2 years old, whatever. So I don't know.
Whatever.
We'll see what happens.
Speaking of whatever, I guess this is a great time to segue over to more Pixel news. I was making a little face because we were just talking about hardware failure. Anyway, we don't really know what's going on. We do know that OnLeaks posted photos of the purported Pixel 5a, and surprise, surprise, it looks nearly identical to the Pixel 4a 5G, except it's a little taller, 2.3 millimeter taller to be exact, and it's slightly slimmer. It's a little less than 0.6 millimeters slim. These are very minute numbers. The display is the same 6.2-inch OLED from the 4a 5G, and the camera system, surprise, surprise, is the same config from the 4a 5G. It also has a headphone jack, a rear fingerprint scanner, and stereo speakers. So it's just probably going to be a slight bump.
Basically the same thing.
Yes, exactly. Just a slight
bump. Probably the internals are a little different. I have to imagine there would be some sort of a shift in the internal, like the processor, or maybe they make some changes to RAM and everything. But I don't know. It sounds pretty similar. Not a whole lot of difference going on there.
I want to know when we shift away from putting 5G in the name.
Yeah, when is it just
when is 5G
when is it just a phone?
Enough
right.
that it's just...
It's a good question. I suppose that's when everybody actually has access to 5G and can point to it and say, "Oh, I'm getting it now, and I understand why it's good."
It's more of a network thing, I think, than the device thing. At this point now, it's a selling point for the networks and phones that have, to your point. We're probably a year away from that, probably, I would guess. I don't know. 5G is such a joke. Anyway.
Fair enough. Well, let this be the last year of the 5G phone, maybe. As for foldables, I know you were wondering in your mind, boy, I wonder if they're ever going to fold the Pixel in half. Maybe. Google has reportedly ordered foldable OLED displays from Samsung's display manufacturing house. I don't know if that's what it's called. I made up that last part, but I like the way it sounds. It's like a fashion house, the manufacturing house. 7.6-inch foldable panel, which is the same as the Galaxy Z Fold 2. And if we really are going by whatever these leaks, these reported leaks are, then we would be looking at a late 2021 or 2022 release, if at best.
Yeah, right.
I don't know. What do you... I guess because I haven't really physically been with a foldable phone, I'm having a hard time envisioning it. But could you guys envision a foldable Pixel?
I'm very excited by this.
Yeah?
Very excited.
I think this is the one Ron would splurge for.
Possibly.
Do you think Google would get it right, or I don't know?
I think they got
not so certain.
They got to partner with someone who's been getting it right. And who could that be?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right? Samsung's been getting it right.
Well, and Google's been programming for it for a couple of years now with those same Samsung devices internally. So.
Yep.
Michelle, what do you think? Are you pro a Pixel foldable? Do you think Google could nail the foldable by comparison?
I mean, I think it's early to say whether or not they're actually working on an actual Pixel foldable. You see this all the time where they're ordering components from the display manufacturer so they can create prototypes and see if they can actually make something out of it. So that's probably the stage they're at right now. They're not actually like ready to mass produce a foldable Pixel. I mean, I hope they are. It'd be interesting to see. But of course, do they have the actual expertise to design and they're not going to be manufacturing it themselves, obviously, but can they design and do it as well as Samsung? Probably not, but they can buy the best foldable panels on the market thanks to Samsung, and they'll probably have to source other components to build a foldable phone. They certainly can build the software for it, and it would be really good for the ecosystem if they did make a foldable Pixel, because that would give developers, like a reference hardware with stock Android that they could build foldable apps on.
Right. Mm-hmm. Right. Versus having to build apps on a Samsung phone with one UI and all the Samsung caveats that you have to. That's why whenever there is the conjecture like, well, they ordered this now, so clearly this means that there's a possibility this is going to be happening now. I mean, you're right, Michelle. We need to think about the fact that there's probably a prototype going around the office. It's just like in a Tupperware container, I bet. And they just pass it around from
with a big sticker that says
before COVID times.
A big sticker that says "Do not leave in bar."
Exactly.
Right.
Or in the fridge. Don't leave it in the fridge.
Or this is not leftovers. Okay. All right. So we actually have some app news to talk about coming right up.
I love when there are stories that are designed to make Flo's head explode, and this is just one of them.
This is really bad.
Oh yeah. No, actually, I think it's great. Bad. When you hear about it, you think it's bad, but it's actually pretty great. Last week we did a deep dive on Android Automotive and Android Auto. But for now, if you are an Android Auto user, you're gonna have a new feature coming soon: games. Dun dun dun. I know we talked about it last week. We talked about like the Tesla style video games that are included in the enormous Tesla video screen. Not those type of games. These are all assistant based voice games. So you could be in the car and say, "Hey G, play a game," and you could do things like trivia using the popular Trivia Crack game, or Jeopardy, which by the way, I am a paying subscriber of Jeopardy on Google Assistant. When I'm in my kitchen and I'm doing dishes, whatever, I go, hey, G, play Jeopardy. And I get the late great Alex Trebek kind of welcoming me. And then what's really great about the Jeopardy assistant game, I don't know if you guys know about this, but it's actually, it's tied into the show. So the premise is that there's a sixth clue that is saved for the game. So it's the same category as the TV show that you just saw that day, but it's an additional clue. So you kind of feel like you're playing in the game. Really clever, really neat. And they have they do the sports on the weekends. They do teen on the weekends. It's really quite fun. If I had this in the car, I would totally play the heck out of it while I'm driving because it's just talking.
On a road
You're not
trip?
looking at anything. You're not for a road trip. It reads you the clue. You say the answer. Like that would be a ton of fun. I would totally use assistant-based, voice-based games. There's a lot of those kids games with like Disney where you can play with Mickey and things like that keep kids entertained. I don't know. I think this is a cool feature, personally. So.
Yes, this is a cool feature. This is better than, allowing Tetris or Pong on the display.
Yes.
So what is this? They're just basically repackaging the stuff that they put on the smart speakers and making it for the car, right? They're just allowing that. Sounds like.
Yeah.
They're just allowing those commands to come through.
Kind of what it sounds like, yeah. But I mean, it kind of makes sense. I suppose if you're in the car and, you do not want to be touching your screen, the voice activated stuff might actually work. I still wonder as if I'm driving, if that's, how they say you're using a different type of your brain when you're driving and talking to someone next to you versus talking on the phone. It's different, even though it kind of seems like it would be the same. It's different.
Right.
And I wonder if playing one of these games while you're driving is kind of along those lines as well, but it's probably safe. I don't know. Yep. But kind of surprised they didn't do this sooner, actually, because it really is just leveraging what they've already built and bringing it over here,
Yeah.
So,
Ron, you have to test it for us. Let us know.
I will gladly test it. Because right now, Android Auto for me is just glorified podcast player. That's all it is. I even customized the screen to get rid of the apps I don't use, and I never do it. I just play.
You realize it's just all it is a podcast button.
Pocket Cast. Yep, that's all it is. Play, pause. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Can understand that.
Well, this next app story it's good news for Nearby Share, which unfortunately I still haven't used yet. So
who's been sitting at home saying, I'm waiting for some good news for Nearby Share?
I mean,
come on, Michelle,
it's not like
admit
I'm
it.
sharing
You've been waiting
apps with my husband.
You've been waiting for Nearby Share to get its moment in the sun, right?
Right. I mean, it wishes.
Certainly unfortunate timing for it to come out last year.
It is.
The worst possible time for it to ever come out. I mean, Google's been working on it for a while, before COVID. So there's no way they knew this would be coming. But I've used it a few times, actually, just to transfer between
making me laugh so hard.
Transfer stuff between phones.
Yeah, I've used it for that too, and it's actually pretty fast. It works really well in that regard. And I have used it to transfer to my wife's phone. She was like, "Oh, it's neat that," and then we never did it again. It's just one of those things that you need for one quick thing, and then it's done, and you forget that it even exists. And then the next time you encounter that problem, you're like, "God, how can I get this to you? Do I email it?" And you forget that it totally exists at all. That's me, anyways.
Okay, so Nearby Share exists, and there's an update for it to anybody who's using it. Now you can send apps through it. Okay. So it's now in the Play Store app to allow for you to share with your peers, which probably right now is just your family and your roommates and your tiny little pod. So you can open the Google Play Store, go to the Share Apps menu in My Apps and Games, and you can select the apps to share, and then your friend has to accept the incoming apps. Now, some apps aren't shareable, and that includes paid for apps, side-loaded apps, which I feel like is a no-duh, apps that aren't publicly available in the Play Store. So those three categories, don't even think about it. Now, Google did announce last December that this update was in the queue. So this is not oh my gosh, this is such surprising Nearby Share news. I'm shocked and appalled.
I've been waiting.
Yeah, no, this was this was planned. This was planned.
Here's my confusion on this one. Is that when now I'm looking at the screenshots on the XDA article, when you're selecting the app to send, one of the screenshots says, Where Words is the app that they've selected, 94 megabytes. Am I sharing the actual APK from this app that exists in the Play Store?
I'm wondering, is it the APK or the URL?
So how I actually think of a decent use case for this, that if you're in a household, if you live with a significant other or a family member or whatever, because, to Michelle's point, this is not the best time to be using nearby sharing. But if you're in a household where there's other people using Android phones and you download this really cool app, or let's say that your parent wants a podcast app and be like, oh, I've got a great one. Instead of saying, go to the Google Play Store and search for Pocket Cast and then download and install it, you just go, here it is, and you send them the APK, which doesn't have any of your settings or any stuff like that. When you move an APK, it's a fresh launch, and then they're able to launch the app and use it on their own. This is actually pretty genius in that regard.
But why doesn't it just send them? Why doesn't it just share to them like an install link for the Play Store? That's what I don't understand. I guess this way it truly is off the internet. Like, you don't need a web connection in order to share an app this way. I just can't think of many scenarios where that's the required element.
I'm just thinking of I think of parents or grandparents or things like that where the stuff we take for granted is an obstacle. Right.
Sure.
I just recently, migrated a whole portion of my in-laws off of SMS and iMessage and onto WhatsApp. So those of us on Android can all message them correctly. And the hardest part was getting the 70-plus-year-olds to go install WhatsApp.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Right.
I know what you mean.
Yeah.
I had to get my mom. I had to walk her through installing Duo because she's on iPhone. And, anytime we wanted a video call with her, I'd have to fire up my MacBook. And I'm like, you know what? This is ridiculous. Duo is a thing that exists. Why don't you install it? And, that was a 10-minute thing, walking my poor mom through installing an app.
By the way, you'll never get back. Yeah.
It's okay. I got to be on the phone with my mom for 10 extra minutes. It was good from that regard. But I know the pain. So, okay, I get it. So I guess if you have Nearby Share on the Play Store, then you might be able to share with someone, a friend of the show, Chris Lacey's new app. I saw that he tweeted this out, I think a week ago, and thought I'd give it a call out because folks are, always wanting more apps on the show. We don't have the Android Arena anymore. But what you're looking at is his new app. It's called Swirl Walls. And the idea is it is a wallpaper app. It's $4.99, but it has it's like an interactive wallpaper that's all based around these color swirls. So when you go in, you've got all the settings to kind of tweak how it looks and how it's shaded and all that kind of stuff. But you can pick these different designs and then you can kind of find. Oops, hold on. I don't need to review it yet. And you can kind of find, pick through and find these different kind of filters applied to these colorful designs and how they operate. If I use that, it's my current wallpaper, that'll change. And you can see as you're kind of moving around, it swirls around. If I flick, it'll kind of go in that direction too. Kind of a neat little neat wallpaper app that he has created, and it's got just a ton of different kind of approaches, all in that swirly, colorful, in some ways kind of a little psychedelic, depending on the ones that you pick. But here, I like that one. Boom. Kind of reminds me of the Vertigo poster from Alfred Hitchcock. Anyways. Thought it was worth throwing out a mention. Haven't seen Chris Lacey in a while. Maybe I'll reach out to him. But he has been active on this new app and thought it deserved a mention. It's $4.99. It's called Swirl Walls. And
that's cool.
So, yeah.
Swirl Walls.
Swirl Walls. switch back over. Yeah, we don't have a whole, it's funny. Like, I realized as I was installing this app, I hadn't installed a new app in a while. Like, it's been a while. Like, when we were doing the Arena on a regular basis, I was very used to where the Play Store was on my home screen. And this time when I went to install it, I actually had to like hunt, be like, wait a minute, where's the Play Store again? Because I haven't gone there in a while. So I don't know, for whatever that's worth. Not installing as many apps these days, I suppose. Michelle, has your app install habit, has it tapered away in the last few years?
Kind of, but I mean, I still have to install a whole bunch of new apps just to test them out for XDA and
that's true.
Get things working on phones. Swirl Walls is the most recent app that I installed. I actually haven't been able to use it on Android 12 yet because it's actually not a very good app to use if I want to demonstrate the wallpaper-based theming, just because of how uniform the colors are. So it doesn't really actually pull a relevant theme based on the wallpaper. So I haven't actually used it on Android 12 yet, but I'll probably give it a shot on my main device.
I actually was kind of curious to know how it would react with that once Android 12 became a thing with that theming engine. So it's interesting that you tried that out. So congratulations, Chris Lacey. I know it's not easy to turn around an app and to develop it, but you did good. I love his work. So Swirl Walls is the name of that app. Check it out. All right. We do have, coming up next, a few of your emails. And when you do email us, you send them in to AAA@twit.tv. You can also leave a voicemail, 347-SHOW-AAA if you like. Flo, you got the first one. It's a little long, so my apologies, but I thought it was interesting.
This one I actually extremely resonate with, so here we go. This one comes from Aaron. Aaron writes in, what's up with streaming cameras on Google Home? Currently, if you have a speaker or hub product and say, show me camera name on TV name, it works. If you set up a speaker or a hub product in the device settings to have a default TV, you can skip saying which TV you want and it will default to that TV. The issue is hub devices. If I set up my Nest Hub to use my bedroom Chromecast as the default TV, it will no longer cast my camera to the hub screen via voice. It will still stream to the TV I targeted in settings, but when I ask it to stream to my hub instead, it gives me YouTube videos based on my camera's name. Example, show me side door camera on bedroom Nest Hub. Results in, okay, playing side door videos from YouTube.
Oh, it's so lame.
To fix this, I must remove the default TV on the hub, but I don't want to do that, as when I am laying in bed, I want to issue commands without saying on the bedroom TV after them. Since the Nest Hub has a display, it will automatically try to play videos on it unless you set a default TV or tell it exactly where you want it to play. Aaron, I want to really appreciate that you wrote in because this has happened to me many, many times before. Specifically in this room that I'm in right now, which is my office, I have a Lenovo Smart Display to my right, and then I have that Nest Audio in the back. And because the Nest Audio behind me is not connected to any TV, it's just sort of on its own. If it's on, which it's actually not always on all the time because I have it on a timer, then the display next to me will not show me my front door footage. And I really rely on that display next to me to see the front door because sometimes I can't get up to get to the door. So I want to see what's going on. I think that this is really good advice to remove the default TV. I know it's super annoying to have to use your voice command to the extent that you have to sort of overpronounce it. But unfortunately, I just feel like unless we have a little more fine tuning over, I wish there was like a control where we could say, these two, well, there is, we can tell it what room it's in. So I feel like there should be something in there automatically that, denotes between the two assistant devices. I don't know. But that doesn't fix your problem, what I'm saying. So Aaron, I'm sorry. This is a common known annoyance. And I'm sure there's a lot of people listening right now who can agree that this has happened to them as well. And it's just as annoying. So
I think there's just a whole lot of different ways that the Google Home ecosystem or the Nest Hub ecosystem or whatever it is they call it now, where it doesn't quite get it right. And, it used to be a lot more simple. It used to be just a handful of devices. Now those integrations have blossomed and bloomed and broadened out to encompass so many different devices. And, it's not just playing audio now. Now it's also dealing with video and video on TVs versus hub screens and everything. I understand the complexity and the reason why issues have cropped up. But man, I got to tell you, and I don't even have these screens in my home, but I have been, over the last couple of years encountering issues just with my audio devices. And it's just frustrating. It used to work so well. This whole ecosystem used to work really well. And I feel like in the last couple of years, it's almost like it got overcomplicated itself. And as a result, things just don't work as dependably as they used to. And as a user, that's really frustrating.
And I feel like that was done in an environment of simplifying it.
Right.
So
right.
In an effort to simplify it,
right.
They overcomplicated it, which is fascinating. So.
Yeah. What do you think about this, Michal? Like, it's a delicate dance, right? Like, people want features, they want hardware to be expanded with a feature set and everything. And obviously, Google's developing and creating support for all these integrations. But just, I don't know. Do you encounter this?
I agree with a lot of what both of you and Flo have said about the Google Assistant ecosystem, how it's gotten kind of more complicated. But I also realize that, a lot of this complication comes from the fact that a lot of us have had these devices for so long, and we continue to invest in the ecosystem, buying more Nest Audios, buying Chromecasts, buying hubs, displays, all this stuff, and interconnecting them. And it's just becoming like anyone who invests in these ecosystems and keeps buying more and more devices, you start to realize how complicated it is to actually have these function the way they do right now. And I think there's just a big limitation in the technology we use right now, like Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. We're like stretching them to their limits to have them like interact in like actual room by room basis. There needs to be some kind of change to make it all work better. Maybe ultra wideband will help with that somewhat, with like more accurate room like detection. But I don't know exactly what would fix it. The fact that it worked a lot better back then could also just be it was just a lot simpler back then. There were a lot fewer devices to interact with.
I completely agree. I think that's exactly why. Like, I totally get it. I get the technological complication, that is created in this ecosystem broadening out the way it is. What I kind of want, like, I would love the ability to open up my Google Home app at this point and just, even though I probably don't want this actually now that I say it out loud, but at times I do, where I can just nuke it and start fresh. Be like, you know what? Take everything that I've set up in this ecosystem, wipe it out. Yes, I know it's going to take me an hour or maybe longer to set up all of this stuff again, but I can't help but think that, like, over time, adding these little things and approving this and,
like a fresh
doing all that
install
stuff,
on a computer.
Did it wrong. Yes, totally. Like a fresh install because it's such a complicated setup. Like, and it's a complicated setup that I've created over the course of 3 years. Like, would it work better if I just like started fresh right now? And there's no real easy way when I look at the app to do that. I'd have to go in on every device individually and do it. And I'm just not going to do that. So I couldn't even figure that out if I wanted to, unless I had a lot of time to throw it at, which I don't.
Yeah, you'd have to do something like factory reset every individual device and then delete the home in the Google Home app.
Right.
I've heard just deleting the home can cause a lot of problems if you try to set them up back again. So you probably have to reset every device before you do that. Yeah, it's a mess if you don't plan like how all these integrations as you're setting them up.
Yep. Awesome discussion there. Kep wrote in to say, I've been an AAA listener for years. I have a 2016 Subaru Legacy and frequently listen to podcasts by connecting my Pixel 5 to the car via Bluetooth. I've been seeing the mystery picture of All About Eve when I listened to your show for years and have racked my brain as to what was going on. Thank you for finally answering the mystery. What a great moment from last week's episode.
Oh, thank you, Sam.
Honestly, that was one for the ages. That was like, you can't make that up. It was so good.
It was so good. There we are. There's another version of us, me and Flo. I don't know where you are, Ron. But
I'm clearly not in the bed. I'm
Ron
behind
is the record label.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ron is the man behind the scenes. I did reach out to what was her name? I sent her her publicist an email.
Oh man!
And I have not heard back.
I was gonna say, how did that go?
I haven't heard back. I'll let you know if we can get her on as a guest.
She's gonna be like, "Who are you people?"
She's like, "What? You guys are crazy." We're gonna be like, "No, what Android phone do you use? We really want to know." Anyways, thank you, Kep, for writing in. I think you represent a lot of other people, actually. All right, Ron, you have the honors.
Yeah, well, that one was great, but now it is time for the Burke.
No, it is not time for the.
It's time for the. I like the fanfare to come first, Burke.
Definitely not the time for the.
Thank you. It is the email of the week. All right.
That's about all we get today.
All right, fair enough. We don't deserve a fanfare. No, we do deserve a fanfare because this email of the week comes all the way from Scotland. Thanks to Domhnall, who writes in and says, "Thanks for a great episode last week with Sam. I bought a Tesla Model 3 in March last year, and the lack of Android Auto plus the truly terrible voice commands are one of the main reasons I want to sell it. The nav system is nowhere near as good as Google Maps or Waze. The only way I can get it to recognize any commands, and this is great, the only way I can get it to recognize any commands is to put on a fake American accent. I live near Mateo." For those of you who listen to the show, longtime listeners, Matteo Doni, our good friend. He says, "I live near Matteo and have a similar accent. So imagine Matteo faking an American accent to get a feel for how bad this is." And I've heard Mateo's American accent.
Yes.
And it's not good. It's not good.
It's awesome. I love it.
So Domhnall,
Mateo's American accent is friggin' hilarious. And he nails it.
Does he? Does he?
Does.
So if Mateo wants to borrow Domhnall's Tesla Model 3, he can use that bad American accent to get it to recognize the voice command, which that's something I've never really thought of. Like, voice commands have to account for localized accents and language and stuff like that. It's got to be incredibly frustrating if your voice commands don't understand you because you have a very challenging Scottish accent. So,
Indeed.
My word.
Yeah. That would be. I would not go far if I needed to fake like a British accent in order for my car to understand what I was saying. It would be hilarious, but I would probably sell it too. I'd be like, seriously, this doesn't work for me.
You're just like, screw this. I'm just gonna sell you. I don't even want to deal with this.
Not worth it. Not worth it. All right, on. Well, thank you so much for emailing.
That was the email of the week. Well done.
Yeah, apparently it's not working today. Okay, that's okay. We'll have twice as many next week. We'll make up for it. All right, so we have reached the end of this episode of All About Android. Michal, thank you so much for hopping on with us today. Always a pleasure to get you on, and especially on a day like today where there's so much news that you guys have been dominating with Android 12. It's always our pleasure. Thank you.
Well, thanks for having me on. I'm glad to finally get a chance to talk about all the stuff because I hardly had a breather the last week.
I'm sure. I know. Like that's what I mean. That Android goes into the sky and you guys get to work, and I kind of envision you never taking a break, always trying to pick it apart and find all the things that are just hiding basically in plain sight. And you all do a tremendous job of that. XDA-developers.com for people who aren't familiar, but you should be because you guys kick some butt. If people want to follow you online, what's I didn't pull it up here. What's your Twitter handle?
It's just my name @Mishal Rahman.
Right on. Awesome. Well, Michelle, thank you. And I'm sure when we have the final release of Android 12, we might have you back then as well. You never know. But we'll definitely have you back sometime soon. Thank you, man. Flo, what do you want to talk about, Flo? What you got?
Michelle, we are also looking forward to having you back. I wanted to go ahead and as for me, I'm looking forward to just go to florenceion.com if you want to see my website where I put things up on the internet. I'm on the social media accounts, places at OThatFlow, from TikTok to Instagram to Twitter. And I'm also on the Relay FM network, and I'm hosting the Material podcast over there with Andy Anatko. So that is me. Until next week.
Until next week. That's all about Flo. Thank you, Flo. And what about you, Ron?
Yes, you can follow me over on Twitter and Instagram at RonXO. And if you are into pinball and into cool kind of hackery type things, electronics, go to scorebit.io, where you can find out how you can get a device that connects your pinball machine to the internet, or just download the Scorebit app on Android and go play some pinball and keep track of your scores. It's in the Google Play Store. Thank you.
Yeah, right on. Scorebit for the win. Big thanks to Burke and Victor behind the scenes, helping us do the show each and every week. Couldn't do it without you guys. As for me, Tech News Weekly is the other show I do on the Twit Network. So twit.tv/TNW. Got some cool interviews each and every week. Micah, Sargent, and I talk with people who are writing some of the big news stories. And sometimes we get the people behind the stories on as well. So twit.tv/TNW. If you want to find some All About Android swag, you can do that. Go to twit.tv/store. We've got some All About Android logoed materials, shirts, hats, masks. Get yourself a mask, wear it around town. People be like, oh yeah, I know that show. I listen to it too. Totally, that will happen if you wear a mask. But twit.tv/store. Thank you so much for watching and listening each and every week. We love you all, and we couldn't do it without you. So thank you so much for your support. We publish this show every Tuesday evening at twit.tv/AAA. That is our show page on the web. Everything you need to know to subscribe, to find us on YouTube. All the links are there. Just go to twit.tv/AAA. That's the only link you'll ever need for the rest of your life. That is it for this week's episode. We'll see you next time on All About Android. Bye, everybody. Oh, yeah. Yeah. My goodness.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
Thanks so much for subscribing to a show here on the Twit Network. We do appreciate it. Hey, if you want to make sure you are up to date with some of the most important tech news in a given week, you've got to check out my show, Tech News Weekly. My co-host Jason Howell and I talk to the people making and breaking the tech news in a given week, and it's your nice taste of what's going on during the week before our big show on Sundays.